All right, everyone, we just finished recording this pod and we wanted to come back and give a little bit of an intro because I feel so many different emotions. And here's why. The stakes of this are super, super, super high.
Yeah, we're talking about what's going on with robots in the real world. So robots that are being used, we have specific examples of really cool businesses that are doing robots for lawn care, restaurants, all different types of things. But then we go over the Elon Musk versus Sam Altman lawsuit. What is this lawsuit between two of the power players of Silicon Valley? And what's our take on it, which might surprise you, as well as some of the nuance, the marketing and PR that's going on here. We kind of call it out.
This is actually, we have fun while doing it, but this is actually really, really important in my opinion. Listen to the entire thing, and you have to listen to the first half to build up the story and the stakes for the second half. Trust me, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about when you get through the whole thing. So enjoy it.
All right, what up, Sam?
Hey, what's going on?
Sam, I got to tell you something. When it comes to kissing, eating ice cream before bed, or business, timing is everything, my friend. And I think that timing is important in all aspects of business. And in technology, there's a moment happening right now. I can feel it. It's like when you hit your funny bone and your whole arm gets hot. I can feel it right now. Shit's about to change. Robots are going wild. I got to talk to you about robots.
And they've been around for a minute, but now it actually feels like it's a reality.
Exactly. So right now, a lot of people are talking about Tesla because Elon Musk came out and he said the future of Tesla is this humanoid robot. And I forgot what they call him, like Optimus or some shit like that. So it's like, he's like, hey, we got this robot that can walk around, pick up stuff, do tasks. It's going to change the workforce. And your boy, Brad Adcock, he's got a company called Figure, which you're an investor in. They have their robot. And I think they just raised like $1 billion or something, right? Like last week.
I think they raised $600 million at a $2.5 or $3 billion valuation, I think.
Nice little investment there for you.
I know. I was in on the first round. I doubled down and did on this round. Is this going to be my Mona Lisa? Is this going to be my big win?
Well, it could have been anybody's because you had him come on the podcast and tell the world what he was doing. So good on you. Multi-billion dollars valuation right now. So that's a big deal. And people are really excited about that. I think there's these stats that say if basically labor is 50% of the GDP. The labor market is a 10 times bigger market than transportation, which makes sense why Elon is like, hey, forget cars. It's all about these robots. We're an AI company. We're doing robots. He is very good at repositioning and reimagining the vision of the company over and over and over again, right? It went from affordable electric cars to self-driving autonomous vehicles, robo-taxis that will just drive people everywhere. Your car will become an appreciating asset instead of a depreciating asset. And then now it's not even about cars. It's about AI robots. And that's the future. But I want to tell you about something that's less fancy than that because I think it's going to come first. And that is single purpose robots, AKA Roombas on steroids. And Roombas on steroids, the Roomba it's a single purpose little vacuum robot that just goes around your house. But it's in the wild today. It actually works. It's actually useful for people. An even better example, I think, is the dishwasher, which is in pretty much every home in the United States right now. And it saves you a ton of time. When you're my dishwasher broke last week, terrible experience when your dishwasher breaks. The dishwasher is a single purpose robot that's actually out there in the wild. We should be striving to create something as useful as the dishwasher. That should be the North Star right now for a lot of companies. And there are. So I went on Twitter today and I saw this great video that was about a company called Electric Sheep. Have you seen this?
No. Electric Sheep? That's
Electric Sheep.
I don't know what it is. That's a great name, I think. And I think it's a lawnmower.
It is. Imagine if you took the Roomba and you put it in the lawn. That's what it is.
That's a great name.
It is a robot that mows your lawn, does all kind of landscaping. What's interesting about these guys that I found pretty fascinating is not only are they a company that's like a bunch of guys in a garage building a robot, like a lawnmower that's got a camera on it that can go around your lawn, they're actually buying up and rolling up landscaping services. So it's a combination of a sweaty startup and a moonshot startup together. So these guys are going out and they're buying all these landscaping businesses in the Bay Area. And because they're like, well, we need a testing ground for robots. Like you have to actually like in their office, it's just like an AstroTurf. And they're like, yeah, well, I can do this square AstroTurf pretty easily. It's not so bad. But in the real world, your lawn has got all kinds of different lumps and dips and divots and trees and rocks, and it has to be able to work. How are we going to get the best data, right? Just the same way that Tesla is putting all like the cars on the road, collecting data at all times, and they're collecting like whatever, 100 times more data than the next biggest self-driving car company. These guys are trying to do that with their lawn care robots. So they're buying these landscaping businesses. Then they use them as a sandbox. They take their robots out and they try to use them. They mow your lawn normally, but they'll try to test their robots as well. They gather the data. And then over time, they're like, well, we're buying these landscaping businesses at one valuation. But then what we'll do is we'll slowly start to replace the workers in the landscaping business with the robots and actually have improved margins. And so we're going to it's like a private equity play as well. And so I thought that was a pretty fascinating approach that I hadn't heard before. I can't decide if that's just overkill. Like maybe that's not actually necessary to do two hard things at once. But I did find it very interesting. What do you think of that strategy?
I'm looking at their website. All right. So it's slick. This is cool. I agree with you. The whole overkill thing, that bothers me. That could be true.
Well, the problem is like the founders, went to Stanford, and like you're smart enough to build a robotics company. That's almost, you're smart enough where you can get yourself into trouble.
Right.
You could be like, oh, we'll vertically integrate. And it's like, anytime you use the words vertically integrate, be real careful. You might be midwitting the shit out of your plan right now.
Basically, like for him, there needs to be a Venn diagram of this guy, this founder of Sheep Robotics. He's like the dumbest smart person, and he needs to hang out with the smartest dumb person. And we need that like Venn diagram overlap to make this the perfect business. That's kind of like what he's doing.
Exactly.
This is awesome. This is cool. Another thing that I worry about. This is badass, but is it a badass team and a badass execution on like
small opportunity?
Yeah, like lawn. I mean, I don't know. Is lawn mowing a big? I mean, is it as grand of a plan as what these people are actually capable of doing?
I think so, because I don't know how big the landscaping industry is, but I know that anytime private equity is going and rolling up things, there's a lot of money to be made. Private equity doesn't roll up, lemonade, small lemonade stands, for example. Like they go into things that are cash flowing, industries. And so I do think if you added up all the landscape businesses and you're like, well, either what they're going to do is they're going to use them in their own business to get it right. And then they're going to go lease or sell these robots to every landscaper in the country and be like, hey, would you like to improve your operating margins by, 10%, 20%? Use these robots. And so that either that's what they're going to do, or they're going to go try to outcompete them somehow on price. I don't really love that idea. So I think it has to be they're just using this to prove their own tech to then go lease these out to every other landscaper.
So on their About page, they list their team. And I guess their advisors include this guy named Dan Foley. It says Dan Foley was a CEO of a company that sold to Brightview. I Googled Brightview. Brightview is a commercial landscaping company that did roughly $3 billion last year in revenue. And
Yeah.
It's publicly traded. It has a shit market cap.
So what you're saying
multiple.
is the newsletter guy is calling the land guys small?
No. What I'm saying is, I did call it.
What's up, blog boy?
I did call it small, and then I looked at Brightview, and it just shows I'm an idiot. I don't know anything.
Like every great man, you're willing to change your mind. Congratulations.
I'm only one Google away from saying sorry. All right, everyone, a quick break to tell you about HubSpot. And this one's really easy for me to talk about because I'm going to show you a real life example. So I've got this company called Hampton, joinhampton.com. It's a community for founders doing between $2 million all the way up to like $250 million a year in revenue. And one of the ways that we've grown is we've created these cool surveys. And so we have a lot of founders who have high net worths, and we'll ask them all types of questions that people typically are embarrassed to ask, but provide a lot of value. So things like how much the founders pay themselves each month, how much money they're spending each month, what their payroll looks like, if they're optimistic about the next year and their business, all these questions that people are afraid to ask, but well, we ask them anyway, and they tell us in this anonymous survey. And so what we do is we've created a landing page using HubSpot's landing page tool. And it basically has a landing page that says, here's all the questions we asked. give us your email if you want to access it. And then I shared this page on Twitter, and we were able to get thousands of people who gave us their email and told us they want this survey. And I could see, did they come from social media? I can see, did they come from Twitter, from LinkedIn, basically everywhere else that they could possibly come from. I'm able to track all of that. And then I'm able to see over the next handful of weeks, how many of those people actually signed up and became a member of Hampton. In other words, I can see how much revenue came from this survey, how much revenue came from each traffic source, things like that. But the best part is I can see how much revenue came from it. And a lot of times it takes a ton of work to make that happen. HubSpot made that super, super easy. If you're interested in doing this, you can check it out, HubSpot.com. The link's in the description. And I'll also put the link to the survey that I did so you can actually see the landing page and how it works and everything like that. I'm just going to do that call to action then. And it's free. Check it out in the description. All right, now back to MFM.
So check this out. Okay, so that's the first one. Now I have a similar, where else are robots being used? Again, these single-purpose robots, not the general robots, but single-purpose robots. In the same way that we got specific AI before we're getting AGI, artificial general intelligence, we got specific AI where it's like, I don't know, it's been like 20 years since DeepMind could just beat Garry Kasparov at chess, right? Like we solved chess, then we solved Go, then we solved math, then we solved route planning. You could do these single-purpose AIs that way before you can get to general AI. So similarly, I think the timing of the opportunity is not in the Tesla robot or even, the Figure robot, which is like just a human robot that could do everything. That is the biggest win, obviously. But I think before then, almost by definition, we have to see these specific one-job robots because it's going to be easier to build a one-job robot than it is going to be to build a general robot that could do all jobs. And so here's some other ones. So I don't know if you know this, Sam, but this podcast is not only listened to by people who are trying to make their first million, but maybe by people who are trying to make their 100th million, their next million. There's more millions to go. And one of those people is the CEO of a restaurant called Sweetgreen. And so the CEO of Sweetgreen is a listener of the pod. And I was looking up where else are robots being used. And I saw that Sweetgreen actually now has what they call their infinite kitchen, which is a like robot-driven version of Sweetgreen. So Sweetgreen is like a salad bowl type of concept. You normally go in there and there's like, 4 people working the line. And then there's like 4 people in the back kitchen doing prep, just like most fast casual restaurants. And what they've done is they basically went in and they were like, hey, what if first I think they bought a robotics company for $50 million. And then they used that technology to build a concept where you basically have like one person in the store and the rest of it is all done by robots. And so click this link that I put in our sheet. We could show this on YouTube.
By the way, is this Jonathan Newman?
Yeah.
I know that he's a listener. You want to know how I know he's a listener?
Don't tell me you're getting free Sweetgreen and I'm not.
No, even better. He emailed me and he took a screenshot and he showed that he subscribed to My First Million on both YouTube, podcasts for Apple, and Spotify. So if you want to be like John and start a multi-billion-dollar company, you got to subscribe. That's all you have to do.
I don't think there's been anyone who subscribed that isn't rich and famous and successful and desired by many people of the opposite sex or the same sex if that's what they're into. It's just a thing that works, all right? Okay, so Sweetgreen, so check this video out. So basically what they did was they made these like this kitchen. It's just like a giant wall where all the ingredients are in these like little robotic kind of dispenser arm type things. And whatever you order, the bowl goes across the conveyor belt. And then it's like the bowl is spinning. It's like rotating so that it drops in all the ingredients in the right spots. And again, they have all kinds of ingredients, right? So like this sounds pretty simple. It's just like dispensing. But like maybe dispensing almonds is really easy, but feta cheese, which is really crumbly, you got to be careful with it, right? Like so they basically fine-tuned this thing. And now this concept can do 500 bowls per hour. And I DM'd him and I was like, how much does like a human like your normal restaurant line do? He's like, maybe like 170 to 200.
Wow.
So you get basically like more than 2x the speed. And now you have a robot that does work that can work 24/7, never calls in sick, never, always puts the right proportion into every bowl. You have perfect food control costs. And so you end up with a better version of an employee. And the strategy, the way that I think about this is you trade OpEx for CapEx. And trading OpEx for CapEx is actually a pretty good idea.
I think you should further explain what that means.
So today, all restaurants work with human labor. Your human labor is your operating expense. It's the OpEx. And what that means is that for every hour that you're operating, every bowl that you're selling, you need to pay a certain amount in wages to employees. And so let's say today, you're paying $20 an hour to people that work in these restaurants. You got, 10 people working in the restaurant at any given time, blah, blah, blah. You can add it up. And let's just pretend that your labor costs come out to 33% of your revenue. And so the opportunity here, which is, I would say, normal for a restaurant, food costs usually 30%, labor costs usually 30%. And so you add these up. You can't change the food cost, but could you change the labor cost? And so what he did with these restaurants is every restaurant to put in these robots costs more money. It costs more CapEx, which is like the initial upfront investment. And I think in their last earnings call, they said it's about $500K to put the robot in. So you put an extra $500K to build the store. But again, this is $500K of CapEx, which means you can depreciate it, which is good for your tax purposes and whatnot. And it's a one-time cost versus your OpEx is a everyday of operation. And what they found was for that extra $500K investment, they get at least an extra 7% of net margin from those restaurants because they have less OpEx. And so you would take that. That basically creates, some break-even point where you say, okay, cool, 2 years in, we're going to have paid off, the cost of this robot or whatever. And also he's like, the $500K CapEx, that's today. And this is the most expensive it's ever going to be. Like the costs are only going to drop as we scale up, as we refine as we simplify the design. Like every version we come out with is just going to be lower cost than this one. And I asked him, I go, in 10 years, what are the odds that your restaurants are basically robot driven, not human labor?
Is this guy, Sweetgreen's publicly traded, right?
Yes.
Are you allowed to say what he's going to say right now?
I told him, I said, is there anything in that I can't share in this? And he goes, no, I've shared all this. But he was basically like, it's very high, right? Like, and just thinking about that a little bit out loud, it's like, man, that means that the next 10 years, and very easily, hopefully in our lifetime, restaurants are just going to go from, a lot of restaurants are going to go from you walk in and there's just like a bunch of people who are sort of disgruntled people who would rather just be checking their phone right now and then, sitting there with this like stupid uniform on. And it's just going to go where you go in, you push a button, and then your bowl gets made by a robotic arm, and then you walk out. Like that's going to be, there's going to be one human in the loop, one human whose job is now called, robot maintenance, robot operations. And they're basically the guys like, oh, the carrots machine got a jam. Let me go and take a little fork and unjam that thing. Or, hey, I got to refill the container of apples. And so what these guys do with the Sweetgreen restaurant is the humans are all in the back doing the fresh prep of ingredients, and then the robots are serving the customers. And that's how they split it today.
So you and I are fairly optimistic. We try to see the bright side of most things. You in particular do that. But let's try to be pessimistic right now a little bit. So the argument that you're going to see from actually most people, I would think, but particularly pessimists, but most people I think are going to be pessimistic on this. They're going to say, but this is going to ruin the economy. This is going to ruin jobs. And let me ask you a question before you actually give your opinion. Shaan, you own a business that employs warehouse workers. Roughly, what's your annual turnover for your warehouse workers? Like, how often do they quit?
Well, we use a 3PL now, but before when we had it in-house, it was, I would say every year we're going to replace 90% of the team.
So I was reading, I think it was Amazon, I forget, someone who employs 10 or hundreds of thousands of warehouse workers. For them, it was 100%. So it was 100% turnover rate. And I remember talking to Brett from Figure, and I go, Brett, are you preparing to be the most hated man in America right now? And he was like, well, why? And I said, well, because you're going to be, you're taking jobs. And he was like, well, I'm actually taking jobs. In fact, there's all these warehouses that no one's going to work there. They just literally cannot convince people to work there, whether they can't afford it or if it's just people aren't interested in that type of work. And then he goes, plus the average turnover on a lot of warehouses, it is 100%. So they just can't keep people in these jobs for a long time. And so my question to you is, are you pessimistic at all of what's going to happen in 15 years, 20 years? My first job, I was a laborer and then a dishwasher. I think you probably have done similar things like that. What's going to happen?
My first business was a restaurant business. I was the guy chopping tuna and doing all that stuff in the back, doing dishes, every night. I think there's two versions of pessimism. The first version is it's not going to work. The second version is it's going to work, and that's a bad thing. You're talking about the second version, right?
I think it's going to work. It 100% is going to work. I think.
And by the way, I asked the guy. I was like, he's like, what's the non-obvious, like only when you're in the weeds doing it, is it really obvious about this? But to the outside person, they maybe gloss over it. I was like, what's that insight?
That's a great question.
He goes, well, it's like most things in technology. He goes, the first 90% is easy, which makes it really easy to have like a sweet demo. And everybody just immediately is like, oh man, this is going to change everything. And it's like, it will eventually, and probably a lot longer than we want. Because he goes, so the 90% is easy. The next 9% is 10 times harder. So it's like, the simple, stupid example of this would be like, dispensing almonds, easy. Dispensing the right amount of crumbly feta cheese, it is literally 10 times harder than the almonds problem, right?
Or like on a Tesla, like my Tesla self-drives, and the autopilot is mostly good unless it's a flashing yellow light. Then it like freaks out and I almost die.
Right. Or it's like if it's a dewy morning or it's a foggy this, whatever, or it's rainy here or there's construction there, right? There's like all these edge cases. And then that's what he said. He's like, the last 1% is it's even 10 times harder than that first one. And he's like, so with self-driving cars, the problem is nobody wants a 99% good self-driving car, even if that's actually 5 times better than a human.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm going to die at my own hands, not at the hands of this, this piece of software. And so that makes it really hard to roll out these things and deal with the PR backlash anytime there is a crash or a bad result, even if it's even if it's a better probability than humans driving. But I don't think you have the same problem with restaurants, right? Size of the prize is smaller, but also the barrier to entry the barrier to deployment is much smaller. Where it's like, oh man, I asked for light sauce. This is medium sauce, right? Like, it's like whatever. It's okay. It's not a self-driving car crash. And so I do think that that's the case here, where a lot of people can get 90% of the way there, getting the next 9% 10 times harder, getting the final 1% 10 times harder than even that. In software development, we used to say this, where I would always be, because I'm the non-engineer, I worked at a company of all programmers, and I'd just be like walking around, eating cashews and just walking around just like, hey guys, how's it coming? When do you think it's going to be done? And they're like, well, we're about 90% of the way there. Or we got like 90% of the things done, so we're about halfway done.
You're like, great, 10 minutes, we'll be done.
And I was like, wait, 90% done, so you're halfway done? They're like, yeah, the last 10% always takes at least double the time that you've already spent. I was like, insane. All right, cool.
that's how math works.
Anybody
do you remember
need a coffee? I'll go get some.
Like 10 years ago, universal income or universal wages was like a thing.
UBI.
We're gonna give everyone in America a bunch of money. And like, I'm a capitalistic guy, and I was like, what? F that. That's the worst. And then I learned 2 things. One, do you know in Alaska, I've had friends move to Alaska. They do that. They've been doing that for decades. They give you $5,000.
The oil dividend, right? It's like you get a share of the money that they were making from having so much natural resources, I think.
Maybe. I don't know where it's from. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think sometimes it's a tax credit where like you just pay less in taxes. Or if you don't owe any tax money, you literally get a check of like $4,800 or $5,500, something like that. And then the second thing that I learned was I started researching UBI, and I was like, wait, why is Sam Altman advocating for UBI? Like, why are all these like really smart robot makers advocating for it? And I'm like, shit, they know.
It's like when my wife comes home and like, why is the kitchen clean? What did you do?
Yeah.
Why are you cleaning up this mess? You did something else. That's what he's doing by starting UBI.
Which he has. I think Sam Altman, along with a few other guys, are doing experiments in San Francisco where I think they're giving $800. I forget. I don't even want to say because I'm going to get the numbers wrong. But it was like a fairly small sum.
They stopped now. I think they did it for like some number of years, and that was the experiment. And then they stopped. And we should go look up actually what actually happened. But I remember reading something that was like not like entirely positive. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is great. This is the program we need to roll out nationwide. It was like, well, no, that's not what the takeaway was.
But it's still an interesting concept to me that I'm open to learning more about, because when I learn more about these robots, I actually do think I'm just old enough where I think this isn't going to impact me. But for most Americans who are young now, it's going to have a massive impact on their future.
Yeah. And so that second concern of like, oh wait, this is the real version of they took our jobs. Like, hey, it wasn't the immigrants. It was the dorks building robots that took all your jobs. Yeah, I do think that's true. In fact, it's kind of a paralyzing thought because it's not just labor jobs. Actually, it seems like the knowledge jobs are going first. Like,
for sure.
Every 2 weeks, it's like, oh, video editors out of a job. Oh, Photoshop, useless skill now. Okay, well, lawyers don't need them, right? It's like clearly the breadcrumb starts to get laid where you're like, okay, today they haven't replaced all these, but what's going to happen in V12 of this product? Like this V12 is just going to do the job for doctors, for everybody, for all these designers, for video editors, for all these things. And so it's kind of a paralyzing thought. And it reminds me, they did this interview with Elon Musk, and he was like, they're like, you're really worried about AI, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm extremely concerned about AI. It stresses me out. I lose sleep over AI. And they were like, so why are you working on AI then? Why are you developing it? He's like, well, basically, I think this is going to happen either way. It is inevitable. My mind told me that. He goes, and then I just had to decide, do I want to see the AI apocalypse in my lifetime, or do I want to die and then not get to witness it? He's like, I decided I'd like to witness it, which is just a hilarious thing because I thought he was going to say something else. I thought he was going to say like, I can use this for good. And instead he's like, I'd just rather see it in my lifetime than not see it. He's like, and then he's like, then I felt good. And I just continued on. That's kind of how I feel when I see the AI like getting so much better. I'm like, dude, I don't know if any of my businesses will even make sense in 10 years. Well, all right, carry on then. What am I going to do about this? Like, am I really going to go stop the progress of technology? No. Am I going to anticipate this now and like change everything that I'm doing now? Also doesn't really make sense. Let me just make hay while it's possible and see what happens.
I think that when it comes to AI and these robots, I think what it is it's sort of like a squirrel preparing for winter, where between now and the next like 10 years, the name of the game is just pile away as much as you can to get above this certain threshold to where you can make it through this winter that is never going to end. And so it's like between now and whenever this moment happens, if it's going to be in 5 years or 20 years, the name of the game is just hurry up and like board up your home for the store to come. So just that way you're safe for it and that you're independent and you're all right. But once ever that threshold or that time comes, a lot of people I think are actually going to be screwed. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen because I have no idea. But I just think that between now and then, the name of the game is just to make as much money, set up your life in such a way where you can pile away all these nuts and you're just good for the winter. That's like basically how I've been living.
I don't know what the right mindset is. I think that's for right or wrong. That's also my mindset. Is just like
get it while it's hot.
Get it while it's hot. Do good while the getting's good, right? And it's like, well, but I also am not like blinders on about this stuff. In fact, one of the name of my original holding company was Inevitable Outcomes, and I was like, well, why don't I just figure out what is inevitably going to happen and then go invest in that, because that's just a better thing to work backwards from. If you realize that something is inevitable, that's way different than speculating of like, well, maybe this could be the case. It's like, once you know something is inevitably going to happen, then you just have to figure out which company is going to win, which is actually like you've reduced the problem set down into which company is going to win and when is the right time for a business like this to exist. I started this episode talking about timing because I think that these single purpose robots is going to be the big winners in the next cycle here, where like you have the knowledge work, like LLMs, ChatGPT type of stuff. But then I think you're going to see these specific robots. I think both of those are going to be really, really successful. What you're not going to see is I think the human and robot, I think it has to be further out than this. That's just my opinion. There's also other versions of this. So we talked about the Sweet Green one. The founder of Chipotle has a new restaurant concept that's all robotic first.
What is it?
And by the way, one other insight the Sweet Green guy said, he goes, the key is not to retrofit the restaurant. He goes, what everybody tries to do is they have their existing restaurant, then they try to install a robotic arm that can try to use the existing restaurant layout because it's cheaper, right, to not rebuild a restaurant. And his quote was, everybody's trying to retrofit. I'm different. I'm willing to blow the whole thing up. Quote, I'm willing to blow the whole thing up. And he was basically saying, like, we just thought through from first principles. If this was a restaurant that was not going to have humans working on the line, it was going to have robots, how would you design every part of this restaurant? And then let's build those. And so they did 2 this year. They're up and running. And now they're doing like 10 more to scale this up.
What's it called and what do they serve? So is it called Colonel?
So now, what's his name?
Steve Ells.
Steve Ells, the guy who created Chipotle, he's got a new one called Colonel. And Colonel is basically like some kind of like vegan bowl type of concept. And so you can see videos of it where it's basically like dispensing stuff into a bowl, and then it's like shaking. There's like an arm that's just shaking the bowl just to mix it for you. It's pretty hilarious.
The crossover of vegans and apocalyptic
AI.
like AI people, that Venn diagram, I don't think is going to cross over nicely. Like, you know what I mean? like, hey, do you want to go to this restaurant that has no humans working ever because fuck people? Yeah, do they sell hummus? You know what I mean? Like, that conversation is not going to be
plant-based, machine operated, baby.
Yeah.
who's got that tattoo? Nobody.
That's not a huge crossover, but it looks cool. So he has 2 or 3 of these locations.
Yeah, so I don't think this one's like as figured out. It doesn't seem like it's as promising, but there's a bunch of people doing this. Just SoftBank had poured like hundreds of millions into a pizza bot that I've talked about a lot, which is pizza's the big prize here. Pizza is a much simpler dish. Like, it's a single item. It's the most popular kind of like fast casual type of food. And if you could, and it's also owned by chains. And so if you can get Domino's as a customer, you're going to get to go in whatever, like, 5,000 Domino locations. And so whoever can build a pizza bot that can make a perfect pizza every time, perfectly circular, perfect ratio of ingredients, never calls in sick, can work 24/7, consistent. It doesn't matter if that thing costs like, $500,000. You'll be able to sell into all the Domino's, all of the Pizza Huts, all of the chain pizza shops in order to do this. So I think the pizza bot is like, the big opportunity here.
I like to think of myself as an independent thinking person. I like to live my life somewhat independently, and I don't want to rely on other people. That's why I like to start my own companies. When I went to Brett Adcock's warehouse or factory, whatever you call it, and he showed me, he was like, check this out. We're learning how the Achilles on a human works. And we just got our humanoid to move its foot like in a dorsiflexion way. And like, we also like, here's like this human knee that we're studying. Now our guy over here is making the knee so we can like move. I saw this stuff and I was like, Dad, can I come? And I was like, should I drop everything and just come and join you? Like, it felt
Sam
like
Adcock.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
It felt like I was in a cult. Like I was meeting like Charlie Manson and I was like, yes, sir. Who would you like me to kill? Like, I was just like so into this. I remember going to my wife. I was like, you should quit your job. I was like, Sarah, I'm not smart enough, but will you quit your job and go work here? I was like, I just was so into it when I saw this stuff. This is, and the cool thing about this topic is that it's happening this second right now. And this isn't far away enough to say one day in the future. It's like, it's happening now. And over the next couple months and couple years, we're going to see it in play. And I think that's why this topic is really fascinating.
By the way, this is also the magic of Silicon Valley. Like, one of the reasons to be in the Bay Area is because his factory's in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, it's in it's South San Francisco. It's just north of Palo Alto.
So you will either meet somebody, you'll be at a dinner and hear something, or you'll drop by somebody's office and you'll see what they're working on and how they're approaching it. And then you will walk out being like, my life is meaningless. Everything I do is absolutely meaningless. I am a small pale dot on a giant rock, and I mean nothing, and what I'm doing is nothing. Most people, that's a pretty disempowering feeling. But for me, I wanted to be in situations like that. I wanted people who could basically like blow the ceiling off of what I thought was possible, what I thought was cool, what I thought was interesting, and be like, no. You thought that was interesting? This is interesting. And that happened the other day. I don't know if you saw these videos that were going viral. Some people were at a hackathon down in also in Sunnyvale or Mountain View somewhere doing like there's like something called like the AI house or some shit like that. And during the hackathon, this guy walks in with this cool looking jacket and like disheveled hair, like he's been in like a cryogenic freezing tube for the last 10 years. And it's Sergey Brin. It's the founder of Google, just showing up at the hackathon, and he gave an impromptu talk. Did you see this?
No. What did he say?
Well, he goes up there and he just gets really into details about Google's Gemini thing, like about like bugs that they're fixing and stuff like that. Like, not like some grand visionary talk. He was just like, yeah, like here's what it could do. Here's how it works. Here's how we're thinking about this. And he's just talking to a bunch of guys, and all of them, it's hilarious. It went viral because there's a guy sitting there, the guy who asked the question in the clip, and his shirt is just a shirt that looks like someone's body flesh
Yeah,
with boobs. And he asked him a serious question. He's like, what is it about the because like Gemini got in trouble for being like too woke or whatever, like the thing wouldn't generate images of white people. And he's like, how come the LLM is not generating images? What's your views on the policy of that? And nobody even calls out. Nobody, like Sergey Brin, doesn't point at him and be like, dude, can we get a different question? Not the guy with the boobs shirt.
I'm looking at him now. It's just like a guy who looks like me, just like a normal looking dude, but he's got a flesh cover, but it's tits. He's got boobs on his shirt, and
nobody references it. Nobody acknowledges it. It's just like, yeah, carry on. What? Live and let live, baby. That's the San Francisco way. And so it's a very strange place, but it's strange in a way where kind of amazing things happen, like the founder of Google just showing up at your hackathon and answering some questions. This is pretty wild. I
experienced this all the time in San Francisco when I lived there. There'd be so many times where it was like, I've told many stories about this, where I've go to someone's office and there's just like huge screens with porn playing, and it's like, well, they're just working on this website, and it's like they make porn, and so it's just like normal. We like normalize it. Or there's been other times where like I've seen, like I've come into the office and there's people sleeping under desks and stuff like that, and just like weird shit that we would make fun of, or things on that TV show Silicon Valley where they like have nipple alert, and like I've experienced this in real life, and it's fun to make fun of. But honestly, it's awesome. It is so awesome to like be around these freaks. Remember when hacker houses were like just getting going? I would go to these houses, and you would see that they'd have shared kitchens, and like half the time it was like just powders. It's like, well, these guys just live off these they just live off powders. That's all they eat, and it's really
that's how Soylent started.
That's how Soylent started.
Those guys are just living in a house together where they were supposed to be working on other stuff, and then one of the guys was just eating only. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to create like baby formula for adults, basically. And that became Soylent.
And that same guy, when like, I forget what type of chip it is, when it came out, like, like these credit cards that we use now, where you touch your credit card on a machine instead of inserting it, and you could read the credit card, he inserted all of that into a small chip, and he surgically put it into his hand. And so he could just like touch his hand. So like being around freaks like that, it's fun to make fun of them because it is silly. It is awesome. I loved being around that. I would see this stuff all the time, and I was just like, I'm so happy you freaks exist. This is the coolest thing I've seen. I felt like that all the time. Did you ever experience that, where you'd go to these like hacker houses and they would be disgusting? These guys are just
it's just like triple bunk beds.
Yeah, they're filthy.
Like, but like, God damn it, I can't even look down on this, because one out of 18 of you guys is about to become a billionaire in the next 5 years. I just don't know which one. Like, whose neck beard is the longest? Is like, who's showered the least in this room? Like, I guess write you a check. I think that's the optimal strategy here. Like, I had a buddy who worked at my company that would just do these things, these experiments. Like, his guy Quinn, and Quinn had this like crazy like Sideshow Bob style haircut. And Quinn would be like, he was really into games. And so he's playing this like little like word scramble game on iPhone. And I think like his girlfriend had beat him in the like, him and his girlfriend would play, or this girl he was like flirting with or whatever would play. And she beat him. And so he stayed up all night programming a robotic finger and a camera to like solve this like word scramble thing so that he would never lose again. And I was like, it's like these stories you hear about Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan with like this like fierce competitiveness, but applied in the absolute nerdiest way. And it results in kind of amazing things. And it's amazing energy to be around.
I've been around a bunch of those people, and I love it. And it always makes me feel like the first feeling what I felt is, you're stupid, that's stupid. And then it's like, oh, I'm stupid. You're better than me. And this is awesome. I feel like that on a regular basis when I would go around these weirdos, and I love them.
So we got to also talk about this lawsuit. So Elon Musk sued Sam Altman, and there's a good analysis out there about this lawsuit, but I want to point out a couple of things. So here's my frame of this. Elon is good at PR. He's not just good at engineering. He's not just good at business. He's not just a technologist. He's also kind of a master of PR. And I should have known this, because Tesla basically spends nothing on TV commercials. Every other car company spends like billions of dollars on, like all other car companies in total will spend like over $1 billion on marketing, whereas Tesla runs no commercials. Yet Tesla's brand is huge. And it's because Elon is kind of a master of marketing. He's a master of PR. And he does this with Twitter. He does this with Tesla. And he's doing it with SpaceX. And now seeing him do this with this lawsuit, it's the first time that I've ever seen him do this in public. But it's basically, he's going to lose the legal battle, but he's going to win the PR war, I think.
Have you ever been through a lawsuit? Do you know what the discovery phase is?
No, I haven't, but I'm familiar with the idea of discovery.
So basically, I don't exactly know what all the rules are, but I remember there was a time I was going to sue someone because I thought something didn't work out, and I thought they had violated a contract, and I'd lost money because of it, and I was going to sue them.
Some guy in the gym didn't rack his weights.
Yeah, yeah, insulted me.
Bro code has been broken.
I can't let this stand. And so I was going to do it. I hired a lawyer, and they're like, "All right," but they're like, "You're probably going to win this thing. You're not going to win that much money." And I'm like, "But it's the principle of the thing, whatever." And they're like, "Okay, cool. But do you know what discovery is?" I was like, "No, tell me more." And they're like, "We're going to get access to your email, to your phone records, to your text messages, and they're going to be able to see all of it. And in many cases, and this is where I don't entirely understand how it works, but in many cases, that's completely public record. So if I file a lawsuit, that part is public record. And oftentimes the things they discover will be in public record." And I was thinking about it. It's like, did I just text my wife the other day to let her know that I farted, but a little something came out? Because I think I did text that. And I don't want that in public. And that's like a 3 out of 10 on the PC meter. Like, what's the 9 out of 10? And would I be okay with them seeing that? And that's when it finally hit me. Of all the years of people telling me, don't write like offensive or crazy stuff on text messages or email, that's why. It's because I just didn't want that embarrassing stuff to be seen. So I didn't end up going through with it just for that reason. And so in this lawsuit, we're going to see all types of private conversations that these people have. I think Elon doesn't give a shit. But I think the average Joe would, including me.
Well, I don't know. We should know more about this. I don't know how discovery works of like what parts get, because not everything goes public, but
not everything.
Some
no
stuff does. So it's like, where's the line and how does that work? Because I think Elon has a lot to lose too with that. Like nobody wants their shit out there in the public, and so.
But he does. Like when he texted that guy, the former CEO of Twitter, he replied with all the stuff. I'm like, can we talk about this? And his reply was, "What have you done this week?" Like, I feel like in his mind, he thinks...
Yes, he wants to do that.
But in his mind, he's like, I'm going to say stuff that I want the world to see. You know what I mean? It's like all part of the game to him.
In this lawsuit, there's actually some stuff that's in there that I found pretty interesting. So can I just like tell you what I thought was interesting in this? So so it starts off, basically, the whole lawsuit starts off, the document, and it says, well, humans have transitioned from a labor economy to a knowledge-based economy. And now knowledge is basically getting wrecked by AI. So first, AI got so good it could beat the best human chess players. Then it could find the best routes between 2 points, like best streets to take, fastest route. Then it could beat more complicated games like poker and Go. And what it talks about is that Elon Musk saw this happening, and he was, I think, on the board of or an advisor to a company called DeepMind. And he's like, oh, DeepMind's really interesting. He meets the founder of DeepMind, this guy, Dennis, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And he's basically like, what are your views on AI safety? Because Elon for a long time had been worried about AI safety. And he walks away like, I don't think this guy's really, concerned with AI safety. I think he's just trying to build really powerful AI. Okay, whatever. But he gets pretty worried because he finds out that Google is going to try to buy DeepMind. And he's like, well, Google has the most data because they have emails, they have search, they have YouTube. So he goes, Google has the most data. DeepMind has a monopoly on AI talent. And so they have the best AI talent. And what the result will be is that AGI, when it eventually gets done, artificial general intelligence will be in the hands of, the biggest monopoly, private company out there. And he's like, okay, that's a little bit worrisome. And he goes and he hangs out with Larry Page, the founder of Google. And he's telling him like, Larry, I'm worried about AI. What are you guys doing about AI safety? And he's like, basically kind of the way Elon describes it, he kind of pats him on the head. He's like, oh, don't worry about that. We're not worried about that. He's like, well, AI could take over and basically eradicate the human race if it, there's a path where this goes wrong. And he's like, well, that'll just be evolution. And he's like, don't be such a speciest, Elon. And he's like, speciest? He's like, yeah, you're favoring the human species.
Oh
he's
my
like,
God.
Yeah, I'm pro-human. And so he gets really pissed about this. And he says that this is when he stopped talking to the CEO of Google. So after that, that's like the trigger. according to Elon. And again, I think a lot of this is Elon crafting a narrative. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that these things didn't happen, but I think he's very good at creating an origin story and creating a bad guy and then pitting himself, oh, what do you know, as the hero. And so here he goes. So now what he does is he teams up with Sam Altman. So Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, in 2015 wrote the following. He goes, the development of super machine intelligence, at the time that's what he's calling it, SMI, super machine intelligence, is probably the greatest threat to the continued existence of humanity. There are other threats, but they are unlikely to destroy every human in the universe the way SMI could.
What a great opening sentence. Yeah. All right. Continue, Sam.
So Sam is worried about this. Elon's worried about this. They get together because, then there's the trigger. Google's buying DeepMind. I didn't know this. In the lawsuit, it shows that Elon then went to the PayPal co-founder, this guy, Luke Nosek, and tried to quickly emergency raise $500 million to buy DeepMind instead of Google, just to keep it out of the hands of Google. And he fails. He can't pull the deal together in the last minutes. DeepMind gets bought by Google, and now Elon's really worried. And so Sam Altman then goes to Elon and says, "Hey, why don't we create a nonprofit AI lab to catch up with Google?" And actually, the origin of this was to do it inside Y Combinator, where Sam was currently the president. So did you know that the origin of OpenAI was actually supposed to be inside of YC, and he called it, "What if we created the Manhattan Project for AI?" And he's like, what if YC did a call to arms and was like, hey, we need to develop this technology that basically we need the anti-Google. We need to get the best people we can to start working on this as a research project. And what he said originally was, we'll give them equity in YC as their upside, and so they can work on this as a nonprofit. That was the original idea. I
think he said that no person will have control over this thing that we're making, and instead they were going to get equity in YC. That's how he's like, it'll
be a nonprofit. How do we pay these top AI researchers? Because Google's going to pay them a shit ton. Well, we'll give them equity in YC. YC's our huge, cash cow. And so that'll solve that problem. And he's like, we'll have a board of directors, me, you, Elon, and then we'll pick 3 others. And if it's, he says, this is the initial email. He goes, if it's not obvious what the right thing to do is, then the 5 of us will decide. That's the governance idea. Okay. So that was the original idea. It evolves a little bit.
By the way, Elon's reply to that email was great. And so Sam wrote a fairly casual, he used the verbiage, like you said, those sentences that are a big deal, but it was a casual almost email with 5 points. And Elon's reply was agree on all. That was it.
Right. I have moved straight to the end. So yes, agree on all. So they start and they're like, cool, we're making this nonprofit and it'll be open source. Elon comes up with the name OpenAI. He's like, let's just put it in the name. This is an open source AI. And in the next 5 years, Elon contributes $44 million to this nonprofit. And they develop some pretty interesting tech. So ChatGPT now, GPT-4, it's in the 90th percentile at the lawyers, the bar exam. It's in the 99th percentile for the GRE, the verbal section. It's even a 77% at the advanced sommelier test, which I don't even know how that would work. It's like the sommelier, the wine test. And so he's trying to, in the lawsuit, argue that it's already AGI, which it's not, but he's trying to make that argument because his whole legal case rests on this idea that there's been a breach of contract and they breached the founding agreement. But there is no actual founding agreement. What he's calling the founding agreement is what we call the gentleman's agreement. It's basically a handful of conversations, emails, and then just the initial founding articles of incorporation of the company. He calls all of that together the founding agreement. He says they breached that, but it's not actually a agreement.
I'm a moron, and I don't know anything about legal stuff, but I think that actually counts as something. I think there's precedent where that matters.
So, but in this case, basically, he has to establish that there is a founding agreement and that it's been breached. But if you go look at the founding agreement, those emails, one time they're talking about we could give equity in YC. That's just brainstorming. That's not the agreement. Then later, they do have a little bit more formal of okay, it's going to be a nonprofit, it's going to be whatever. But in the articles of incorporation, it specifically says we will open source this, whenever we deem appropriate. So
yeah, vague stuff.
It's vague, right? It's we will develop this for the benefit of humanity.
We're definitely doing this, maybe.
someday. Exactly. When we want. And so they basically left themselves like complete latitude to do whatever the hell they want. And that's what they did. Now, what I think is interesting, so Elon says a couple other things. So one, he says, GPT-4 is already so good at like those test scores. He goes, and now they're developing this thing called Q-Star. Have you heard about Q-Star?
No. What is it?
So Q-Star is reportedly like the new, not reportedly, rumored to be the thing that the OpenAI is working on that is like next level after GPT-4. So it's like, instead of GPT-5, they're using some method called Q-Star, which they think is like a leap in the intelligence, which is really exciting because even GPT-3 to GPT-4, GPT-2 to GPT-3, like those are like pretty substantial improvements, but not like a huge leap. Whereas Q-Star reportedly is like what the huge leap is. There's rumors where Sam Altman came out and said, I was in a meeting, like we did a demo or we had an internal meeting the other day, and I saw something that like blew my mind. Like basically saw something that just like was awe-inspiring. And it's like, what? Well, what is it? And he hasn't shared any details. This is also right when that big coup happened. They fired Sam Altman.
I saw that.
One of the rumored reasons was, when this could be total bullshit, we don't know. This is one of the rumored reasons was the board saw that how powerful Q-Star is, and they were worried Sam is way too fast and way too loosey-goosey, way too aggressive, and now this weapon is getting too powerful. It's kind of that idea there. So anyways, Elon talks about that in the lawsuit, that they're developing Q-Star and whatever. So it's kind of like confirmation that this thing exists. Although the legal language he uses in all this, he goes, at the start of every sentence, every paragraph, it says, using knowledge and belief. And basically it's like saying like, we don't have evidence, but like, I know some things and I believe this to be true. And then it says all of the claims. So who knows? It's kind of like Elon's claims. A couple other big pieces of this. So I want to read you some Elon emails that did get surfaced in this. So one of the key things that happened early on was they had this dinner. And at the dinner, it's Sam Altman, it's Greg Brockman, it's Elon, and then it's this guy, Ilya. Ilya was one of the leading deep learning researchers at Google. And he became the chief scientist of OpenAI. The big turning point was Elon recruited Ilya away from Google to OpenAI. This is when Larry Page stopped talking to him because he was so pissed that you recruited my like top guy and you declared war basically. And recruiting him was like a Herculean effort, basically getting him to leave Google, and Google was offering him like a blank check.
This is a fucking movie.
And exactly, this will be a movie for sure. So then Google starts offering all of their talent like crazy lavish offers. They just up the ante like crazy. They're like, we're going to price anyone out of this market.
How much do you know?
Millions of dollars per employee minimum. For some people, $10, $15 million a pay package annual. And so it was like, okay, well, Sam and Greg email Elon saying, hey, it's getting really hard to recruit. We have to think of a strategy here. Google is doing this. Elon replies, he goes, we need to do what it takes to get top talent. Let's go higher. If at some point we have to revisit what our current people are getting paid, that's fine. Either we get the best people in the world or we will get whipped by DeepMind. Whatever it takes to bring on the ace talent is fine by me. DeepMind is causing me extreme mental stress. If they win, it will be really bad news with their one mind to rule the world philosophy. They are obviously making major progress, and they should, given the talent level of talent over there. And so he basically gives them the green light, like, I'll keep funding more, go get the best talent. And so in 2016, he gives them $15 million. In 2017, he gives them $20 million. In that 5-year period, he gives them $44 million in total. Now, the problem is, Elon, the biggest backer and the original backer, says he doesn't own anything in OpenAI, the for-profit company. And this is the strongest part of his case. Here's what he says. He goes, how is it that you can create a nonprofit company that is supposed to be nonprofit and open source, raise millions of dollars from people? You take $50 million from me, you hire the best people in the world, and you write down that this is your charter, and then you end up a closed source, maximum for-profit company owned by the most valuable company in the world, Microsoft, owned 49% by them. How is that possible? And he's like, two things. He goes, if it is possible to create a nonprofit, hire people, and basically fund all of the research on, basically like in a tax donation way, where for every dollar you're putting in, you get 50-cent rebate back from the government. He's like, if that's possible, and then you could just flip to a for-profit when you make breakthrough technology, why is everybody not doing that? Why is that not just the default for every single technology company in the world? Either it's illegal or everybody should be doing it. It can only be one of those two things. And I love this argument from Elon. I think this is a tremendous argument. And there's no answer to that question yet of either this is illegal or every single company in the world is going to do this. Why would you not?
You and I are not, I'd say we are fans of Elon's work, but we're lukewarm on him as a human being. And we are only hearing one side of this story. But in the last 10 minutes, only knowing what I know just from those 10 minutes, he's right.
Yeah. So then he gives this analogy. Again, master of PR, he goes, it's like if I donated to a nonprofit charity that said, we're going to save the Amazon rainforest. And then that charity took all our money, and then they created a for-profit logging company that was just cutting down trees in the rainforest and selling the lumber. That's what's happened. That is OpenAI. And so he says it is a de facto subsidiary of Microsoft. And he includes this quote. And this quote, I think, is going to become very problematic. I predict it's going to become very problematic for Microsoft in the future. So it's the Microsoft CEO saying, remember when all the OpenAI drama was going down and Microsoft's stock price started to tank because they were like, oh shit, you've given $10 billion or whatever to OpenAI and they're about to like collapse. This is bad for Microsoft and they're going to go create like a new company that you don't own. That's bad. And so then he came out and he said this publicly. He goes, if OpenAI disappeared tomorrow, we have all the IP rights, all the capabilities. We have all the people. We have the compute. We have the data. We have everything. We are below them, above them, around them.
The like, CEO of Microsoft said that?
Wow. Yes, exactly. And so that also weakens the case that OpenAI is this like nonprofit, non-controlled by Microsoft entity. When he came out and said that we are below them, above them, and around them. God damn. What a phrase.
Dude, this is riveting. This is riveting.
That's me if I go to Chick-fil-A and I order nuggets. I'm below them. I'm above them. I'm around them. I have them. They are mine. Like, dude, that's it. What a phrase.
By the way, the way they call this the Manhattan Project,
Dope.
The best. That is the best. That is so good. All of this is just epic. Can you imagine these nerdy AI engineers who were probably like bullied and were dorks throughout all the years? Now they're like, oh, me? You want me? No, boys, come on. Let's be civil about this. They're just getting fought over. And we're talking about $15 or $20 million a year packages. That's insane. Everything about this story is insane.
You're right. But this needs to be a movie. If you're making the movie or you want to make the movie of this, get in touch with me. Let's create the movie of this. This is going to be like the Social Network movie all over again.
An epic photo collage or something like that would also suffice too. Like just like some neat photos with captions that tells a story. I'm into that. I want to leave it with this. So Dharmesh Shah, Dharmesh is the founder of HubSpot, and you and I have talked to him a bit. He's on this podcast all the time. He's doing this thing on AI that I want him to come talk about. Hopefully he will. He told me something that I tell myself all the time when thinking about this, which was basically Dharmesh is super into AI. He goes to a lot of conferences on it, like insider conferences. I would think that he has a good grasp of it. He has said, it's not probably going to be as good or as bad as you think it's going to be. And him saying that in a calm, like fatherly voice to me, that's like been the one thing that I've been thinking about of like Sam Altman. I think he's a great guy and I love Sam. I don't know him, but just as like a fan of his. I think that all these guys in this game are also brilliant marketers and brilliant business people and brilliant at the skill of programming and making this stuff. But I also think that they're brilliant at PR and marketing. And I have to remind myself constantly that it could be good, it could be bad. It's probably going to be right in the middle, though, of what the reality is going to be in the middle. And these guys are just excellent at telling their story. Do you agree?
Yeah, and we should say, Elon is creating a direct competitor to OpenAI, right? Like Grok, he has XAI, which is like his AI company. It's his AI competitor to OpenAI, and he has Grok, which is the competitor to ChatGPT. That's like the product name. So he obviously has interests in this, and I think one thing that's clear out of this is it's definitely mission driven, like. In the same way that I used to think when it was like, oh, Jeff Bezos is doing a rocket company. It's like, oh, is this just like a giant dick measuring contest between like billionaires? Like just the last level of the game is you say, I win Earth. Okay, let me go win Mars now, right? Like that's kind of what it seemed like was, oh, I'm going to build a bigger rocket than you. But then you read that like even 25 years ago, Bezos was like really obsessed with the idea of space travel and has been a giant fanatic about it and been trying to donate to it and trying to advance the cause in that. And that now, like, even with these companies, he's in all the engineering meetings, the planning meetings every week. It's like, oh, okay, this wasn't what I thought it was. In the same way,
by the way, it could be that, and that's okay. It could be mission driven and ego driven and profit driven, and that is okay to have all those things too.
That's a better way of putting it. Yeah, like most things, it's accelerating because of multiple causes. There's multiple things, multiple tailwinds pushing it. But I would say, like, the hater in me wanted to discredit it, but the realist in me, when I go back and read old interviews or watch old videos before Amazon was super successful, it becomes clear that actually it was a deep interest. So similarly here, even though I think it's part of it is he's trying to bog OpenAI down with a lawsuit and spin the PR battle in his favor, and he has a direct competitor, it's clear that OpenAI would not have existed and would not have been successful had he not genuinely had this fear and concern and belief about what needs to happen with AI long time ago. So, I think that comes out very true in this. There's a paper trail of evidence.
What a fucking pod. I feel amped and scared, excited, nervous. I feel all types of emotions. Great job.
It's like a great first date. It's like, right? Aren't you supposed to like trigger like adrenaline or like the fight or flight response in people? And that's like what bonds you. I feel like that just happened to us.
Yeah, except my version of that was like on our first date, we went on a motorcycle, but now we're talking about like the world maybe ending in 20 years. Good job. This is you did a good job.
I've got a court. I got a court case to tell you about. Dinner? No, we're not doing dinner.
Okay, so you made it this far. To folks listening, go to the YouTube and tell us in the comments. Do you actually think this is going to be horrible? Do you think this is going to be great, or is it what Dharmesh said, where it's somewhere in the middle, where it's not going to be as good or bad as we think? But Shaan, bravo, you did a good job. This was a good pod, and we'll end it there. That's the pod.